Hey guys, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor at CinemaBlend and co-host of the ReelBlend podcast, here to introduce you guys to a bonus episode of the show. We were able to get co-directors Scott Beck and Bryan Woods on the program so that they can talk about their new film, 65. You've probably seen the trailer for this one at this point. It's science fiction. It stars Adam Driver and Ariana Greenblatt. And the hook of it is that while trying to transport some passengers in cryogenical freeze, Adam Driver's ship hits a bunch of asteroids. He has to crash land, and lo and behold, he crash lands on planet Earth during the time of the dinosaurs. There's a lot to talk to these guys about, including their dinosaur design, working with Adam Driver, shooting out in the natural elements and the difficulties that come with that. This seems like a movie that's going to potentially fly under the radar, but as more people see it, I think generate a lot of buzz. So we were really excited to get Scott and Bryan on the show to dive into their filmmaking process and to talk about 65 in general. So that's enough from me. Let's get right to Beck and Woods, co-directors of the new film 65.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining the ReelBlend podcast. It's an honor to have both of you on. Congratulations on 65. We're very excited for our audience to see this. I want to take it back to the trailer, because the trailer for this film was one of the most clever pieces of marketing I've seen, just in terms of the way it was designed, how we really didn't know exactly what was going on until that title pops up, the tagline and everything. And I was just curious, like, you know, sometimes in studios and filmmaking, filmmakers don't love what goes into their trailers because they have to put things in the trailers that actually, you know, are going to elicit a response from the audience. How involved are you in that trailer that you put out for this film? Because to me, it felt like it was coming from you guys, like it was a smart way to do it. But talk about the process of that.
I mean, the trailer was basically the pitch. You know, when we went to go pitch this movie to studios, we went in to their boardrooms and we basically started pitching them Alien, right? We started pitching them, man crash lands on an alien planet, mysterious, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd get like 10 minutes into our pitch, and then we'd like grab a poster and flip it around, and it had a giant T-Rex on it. And like, why does Steven Spielberg get to have all the fun? Like, why does Universal have a monopoly on dinosaur movies? Why can't we, you know, there should be as many dinosaur movies as there are comic book movies. And so that kind of spirit with which we pitched the movie is when we watched the trailer, it's like that they totally nailed that enthusiasm.
Because we always are thinking about, like, marketing is when the story is first given to the audience. Like, it's the first thing that they can see. And we had debates. We're like, debates between ourselves. We're like, is it better to like not even tell the audience that there's dinosaurs till they show up into the movie theater, which could have been an interesting direction. But at the same time, we wanted, you know, people to be excited by what the experience actually is going to be. And so to have that pseudo twist in the trailer was exactly like that sweet spot that I think we all kind of settled on. And, you know, we were really excited with the materials that came back.
So someone does cut that like without your input, and then you watched it and were surprised by it.
Yeah, usually the process is like they cut it, then we get to watch it and then weigh in with any notes and have those discussions, and then it gets revised from there. But you know, it's a true collaborative effort.
Cool. Great trailer.
Right, I want to bring up, sort of building off of that. You guys do something that I don't think I've ever seen in a film before, which is when you finally get to the title, and it's a little bit later into the movie.
15 minutes in.
You know.
Yeah.
Is that how long it is? And I love that. I love when a title takes a long time to come. But your title also comes with basically the elevator pitch. It just keeps going. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I've never seen that before. So talk about the decision to include like a longer synopsis of what's happening.
That's, again, it goes back to the script. Our scripts we usually incorporate bizarre formatting. With A Quiet Place, like 65, doesn't have a lot of dialogue. So we were using like images in the script and implanting them and changing the font work and doing kind of silly stuff. And so one of the things we did for 65 in the script is you get to page 15, right? You're reading a normal script. It's basically Alien, a person transporting people in cryosleep. And you get to page 15 and you flip the page and it just says 65, like small. And then you flip another page. It's like million years ago. Someone came to Earth. And it was just like, we love in our scripts to just like present the to attempt to articulate the cinematic vision of the movie.
I think the other thing too is that, we're talking about the trailer and like all that marketing is kind of the precursor, so people know what the twist is. But like, we were thinking about our childhood and turning on like the TV and on TNT, like I'd be watching, a movie that I saw no marketing for. I'm just kind of thrust into it. And so there's like a longevity thing too that we're looking at. We're like, our greatest hope is that like 2 decades from now, some kid might be like flipping the channel and start seeing like Adam Driver crash land on a mysterious planet. And they don't know the movie, they don't know the marketing. And so that reveal can also work for them the way that the reveal is happening to Adam Driver. He doesn't, his character doesn't know what planet he's actually on. And so it's all kind of this discovery that's happening concurrently.
Wow. Awesome.
Guys, I want to talk about the runtime because it's 90 minutes. There is not an ounce of fat on this movie. It's lean and it moves. And by the time you are just emotionally exhausted, it's over. It's done. Did you guys always envision a lean, tight thriller 90 minutes like this? Or is there a longer version that you guys cut down?
I mean, there's certainly, I think every movie has a longer version out there.
An assembly cut.
Yeah. An assembly cut, exactly. So there is certainly a longer version, but the intent was always to make a really tight roller coaster ride. And the intent with this movie in particular was to strip down, get rid of the exposition. I guess the challenge I would say that we presented to ourselves and Adam is, can we remove exposition and really just let this be kind of a visual cinematic experience, hardly any dialogue, a lot of deep, painful emotion, and a ride. And for us, that couldn't be longer than, really didn't want it to be longer than 90 minutes because it can be exhausting. We are huge fans of like other movies that we would consider in this like kind of sub genre would be like a movie like Gravity or something, where a clean and simple point A to point B, but kind of an exhausting survival experience. And so we looked at films like that. We looked at Apocalypto and even The Revenant, which is a long movie. But yeah, I mean, those were kind of our benchmarks in terms of the ride of the film.
It's interesting.
When you guys mentioned,
go ahead.
When you guys mentioned the exposition, like, did you guys film that stuff and cut it out later, or was that a decision that was made before you guys even started rolling?
No, I mean, it really was before we started rolling. Like, I'm trying to think, like, even the assembly cut, it's not like there's a 3-hour version of this movie that exists. It's like maybe 15 minutes longer, 20 minutes longer. And it's all about, how much information needs to be conveyed, because there's so much that's not said. And we find that visual filmmaking, sometimes like you can put, you can add up 2 and 2 even easier than if there's dialogue in it. And so that was always the thing that we were trying to find, like, how do you create that pace that feels unrelenting?
And one of the things we talked about with Adam is, like, with this movie, if we did our jobs right, you could almost put it on mute and you would understand. That was the hope. Whether we pulled that off or not, I don't know, but that was the ambition that we all talked about. Like Adam was like, it constantly, like, every time we had a scene with Alec, he's like, I don't need to say this line. I don't need to say this line. We're like, great. Like, we love it. Like the less, the better. He was really pushing us to make it as minimal as possible and just let it visual experience if we could pull it off.
And all the while, Sony is like, yes, 90 minutes, yes, extra run times.
Yeah, the way you talked about the exhausting nature of a film that goes past a certain timeline is the way Chris Nolan talked about Dunkirk. Because I think Dunkirk was like 100 minutes, and it was like lean, and like he knew when the audience would finally just be exhausted by it. I want to go back a little bit in your history, because with Blue Box Films and University of Iowa, your story is absolutely incredible. It really is, to sit here and we're talking about a massive budget film for Sony. We're on a film podcast. We're talking about movie making. Going back to those two guys that created Blue Box Films, and kind of like, what do you remember about them? I mean, obviously they're you, but you've made a lot of films and worked a lot since then. What do you still see in those guys that you're still kind of bringing to the table today in a film like this?
I think look back and I'm like, very naive, still feel naive, like very ambitious though. Writing a dinosaur movie is, I say naive because, you need somebody to like believe in that and write a big paycheck in order to make that. But I think to a certain degree, it doesn't feel any different stepping on a set now as it did back then, because we're always trying to figure out how do we use limited resources to make something. We were making movies back in Iowa for, sometimes no money. Sometimes it was like $50. We were holding local casting calls. We were trying to like focus pull ourselves, hold the boom mic between the two of us. And it gave us like a deep appreciation for like everybody that's on a film set. And now when we are on a film set, you have, sometimes on big visual effects days, like 300 people. And there's an admiration for all the artistry that comes into that. I think that's one thing that has certainly developed, but the problem solving, that hasn't changed at all. Like no matter what scale of film, there's inevitably some crazy headache that's going to cause like a creative catastrophe that's going to be a compromise. And you have to be thinking on your toes. Luckily, there's two of us, so we're able to like quickly bounce ideas off of each other. And that's something that we've had now and had back then. But there is a degree that it feels like very similar. And we still feel like those same, 12-year-olds making stuff.
And it's very surreal. Like it's surreal even being on your show, because we've watched your show and we've watched you guys interview our heroes. And it's an honor to be talking to you and weird to be talking to you, because it does feel like yesterday that Scott and I were just like 10-year-olds playing with, like taking our Star Wars toys and mixing them with our Jurassic Park toys and then stop motion movie.
I'm 35. I still do that.
Yeah, and us too. And it's like, and honestly, 65 is that movie. And it's weird that somebody let us make that, but it's very surreal and very cool.
Just a quick
I don't mean this like
a follow up real quick to your the directing aspect of it. Like you see a lot of filmmaker duos who either have a name like the Safdie brothers, I know they're brothers, but or the Daniels or the Hughes brothers, and you see your names come up on screen. Was there ever did you ever come up with a name for as a directing team? Was there? I was just curious. Like, do you go by Beck and Woods? What do you envision your team title is?
The Boring Brothers. We're not that interesting. As
The Boring Brothers.
Yeah, I don't know. It was always Beck and Woods. We never. I
think Beck and Woods sounds cool, man. I was just wondering if there was ever like if you guys ever had an idea for like the Daniels, or I was just curious if you guys ever had anything like that.
No, I mean, the closest we had was the Blue Box. What we used to call our production company was Blue Box Films. And then people kept being like, well, what does it mean? And they're like,
we came up with that name when we were like 15 years old. So we were like, it just sounds cool. And we were like, that sounds so superficial.
All right. I have to ask about this because we get to the end of the credits and you guys have 4 credited actors.
Right.
And if I believe it's the correct 19 stunt people. How is that possible? How can you have almost 4 times as many stunt people?
Well, there's
what's weird? Like that seems particularly ridiculous considering Adam legitimately did all of his own stunts, and Ariana practically did also because she's she always wanted to be involved.
Yeah, we had some dead passengers here and there that had to be rigged up in trees, for instance.
Okay.
It was such a pared down cast that was actually really welcoming. We had done a small independent film called Haunt that had like 6 main cast members and then 6 villains. And just from a technical standpoint, like trying to like move the camera around and keep everybody in frame was like just a logistical nightmare and creative nightmare. And so it was really fun to like pare it down to the bare necessities. And sometimes we would just be working with Adam and he'd be this man of like isolation and in the frame. And it was just so fulfilling to be able to like workshop each scene, like, 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 in our case, and just really have the time to distill like, what's the purpose of this scene, and almost approach it like theater, even though it's ostensibly like it's a cinematic movie that's about dinosaurs.
You guys mentioned Quiet Place. I'm curious because I don't really know the in and outs of like how movies, specifically get made from obviously I'm a filmmaking fan. I love the way movies are made, but the business side of it and the way things get sold and where they end up. Can you just give a brief history about what went down with that film? Was there ever a moment where both of you were going to direct it? Did you ever get to a point where did you have shots already figured out and did you share those shots with Krasinski? I'm just curious, like how that pattern worked. And also that movie was shot 35 millimeter, which was amazing. It was really cool. And I was wondering if you had any input in that as well. But just the story behind that, I'm just curious about.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the quick Cliff Notes version of it was a script that we wrote on spec, and we had set up with Michael Bay's company, and we had put together like a whole pitch reel, which we had posted a while back on our Twitter at Beck and Woods. That exists there, that kind of gives like the tonal comparison of what the movie is. And we set that up, and then we took the script to Paramount, and they immediately bought it. And we were originally directing that. And yet there was like this weird confluence of events where the script got slipped, as scripts slip all the time, to John Krasinski. And he fell in love with it so much that he was like, I really want to just not star in this, but I want to direct it. And what was interesting is there was like a week period where we were debating like, okay, do we hand over our baby, or do we, try and pull the script and then maybe it blows up the movie and we take it elsewhere. And it was like a week of like soul searching of what do we do? I think what pushed us in the direction that eventually what happened with John directing the film was he and Emily being on board, not only from like, a talent and star power standpoint, was they had both had their second kid like 3 weeks before they read the script. And the way that they connected to that script was so endearing to us that we felt even if we handed this over, it would be in solid creative hands. And Paramount was we were doing like rewrites for Paramount, but the rewrites were never about like add in more dialogue, add in more exposition. So we felt even from the studio standpoint, they were really trying to preserve the spirit of that film. And so when we watch that film to this day, we still feel like an incredible love and passion for it. Even though we didn't direct it, it is so much the spirit of what we were going to set out to make that, it became this pleasant experience of a movie going the right way instead of what usually happens. Your script gets taken and then it just gets completely transformed to something entirely different. But it definitely was an interesting point in our career, to say the least, that we were
mostly just confused because they were like, John handed the script to Emily Blunt and she read it immediately and wants to do it. And we were like, they were hanging out, like they were just at coffee. We didn't know that they were. It's like, what are you talking about? Like they just were. All famous people just hang out at all times.
They share scripts. They're constantly sharing scripts with each other.
It's a cool. It's nice to hear a positive story because I feel like that could have gone badly. Like it could have.
So we are all enormous Stephen King fans, and I will be remiss if I don't bring up the work you guys are doing on Boogeyman. And I want to get specifically into the weeds on this.
Yes.
On this story, because I heard this and I want you guys to clarify it, that it initially was supposed to go to Hulu, but it received such positive reviews that Fox was like, this thing's going to theaters. Like,
yes.
That happened. And how do you feel when that happens? And because that's unbelievable.
You're talking to two guys we're building a movie theater in our hometown where we grew up in Iowa right now. We're building.
Are you really?
Yeah. It's a two screener with a rooftop screen platform. And
it's called The Last Picture House because we're like, if we're the last theater standing, we're happy to be that one.
But it's just the same.
Wow.
I love you guys even more now.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing. Gosh.
We love movie theaters so much. We love the experience of going to the theater. And so when we first wrote Boogeyman, it was intended as a theatrical movie. And then of course, like the merger happened with Disney and buying Fox, and it went through all this stuff, and then it was when they greenlit the movie, it was clear this is going to Hulu, and we all had to like sign a addendum to our contract to make that happen. And it was kind of disappointing because we're like, man, horror is like so fun. You'd love to see it with an audience and watch.
Well, like Prey, that happened to Prey also, and
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah.
Could you imagine
Love
Prey in
Prey.
a theater? Oh my god!
I got to see
amazing.
Prey at the Arrow, and it was so wonderful. And I'm so sad
nice.
that other people didn't get to experience it that way. But yeah, so Boogeyman, they started screening the movie once it was finished, and it really started playing through the roof, and it really played the audience like a piano. And it was also Stephen King himself who was kind of like advocating behind the scenes and basically saying like, yeah, my feedback on the film is I don't understand why it's not in movie theaters. And so
right.
thank goodness 20th turned around and decided to put it out in theaters.
Can I ask a quick, like, how are you guys using, because I saw the trailer that came out recently. It seems like you're using David Dastmalchian in a different way. Can you talk about that without?
I mean, the challenge, I'll talk about it like from the challenge of even adapting the short story, because it is a short story. It's like 11 or 12 pages long. And it takes place in a psychiatrist's office where a man, Lester Billings, walks in and he, basically is saying the boogeyman killed all 3 of my children. And the fun of this project was using that as a launching point and then creating a story from whole cloth, but that still, would be the voice of Stephen King, because it is Stephen King's The Boogeyman. And David, is in the movie playing the part of Lester Billings, which to us is a chilling character. It's a chilling portrayal that is that he lends so much weight and authenticity to. So he's one of our favorite actors. I feel like people see him primarily as a character actor, but as far as I'm concerned, he could be a leading man as well. His versatility, as far as I know, knows no bounds. So.
Yeah,
I think he's eventually going to get the Cillian Murphy treatment where he's going to have the Oppenheimer moment, because like his career feels similar to that. I mean, obviously we saw Cillian leading 28 Days Later and things like that, but I feel like that's going to happen for David. David's been crushing it. Go ahead, Jake.
No, I was just going to say, every kid grows up, because I want to swing back to 65 for a second, because every kid grows up basically loving dinosaurs. But one of the benefits of being kind of around my age was that if you were 5 years old in 1993 and you loved dinosaurs and then fucking Jurassic Park came out, it was the greatest thing in the world. So much of my perception of dinosaurs and dinosaurs within pop culture is molded by Spielberg's film. So I'm sort of curious, as filmmakers, whenever you guys are going to start crafting sort of a dinosaur movie, do you look at something like Jurassic Park and go, well, X, Y, and Z are so embedded in our psyche that we just can't do that we have to do something completely different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the iconography from Jurassic Park, whether it's like, ripples in the water or whatnot, like you want to avoid that as much as possible. Now it's a huge shadow to kind of live beneath. And so I think for us, we were, simultaneously acknowledging Jurassic Park, but also trying to find like crazy left of center comps, and some of these will sound like probably really insane, but like Y Tu Mama Tambien, like this road movie.
Love this.
There's this undercurrent of there's a conflict that you discover, and there's a reveal at the end, and there's this sense of like mourning and grief. And so looking at movies like that, helped inform us like, what's the aesthetic? We kept saying that 65 is for us personally approaching it like a blend of Roland Emmerich with Terrence Malick, where there's this
nice.
I thought I saw some Chivo shots in there. I'm like, what's going on? I was like, what's going on?
And I think for us, it was, like you can have this roller coaster ride, but there's like a couple moments throughout the movie that kind of stop the movie for a moment, and it just steeps itself in, character and these moments between Adam and Ariana's character. And we feel like otherwise you probably wouldn't see those in like a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movie. So that was always, we were trying to oscillate like the tone and find the perfect blend between our sensibilities, which really do span the gamut from Michael Bay to Francois Truffaut to like Jacques Tati.
Well, there was such a great moment, I was telling the guys before we hopped on, where I don't want to give anything away, but it basically uses sort of like this kind of hologram of Adam and another dinosaur to show a fight that we're not seeing. And it just like whenever I saw that, I was just like, oh yes, because I felt like any other filmmakers would have shown us a fight that we've seen 10,000 times, but you showed us that maybe that fight's happening, but we're going to present it to you in a really cool, unique way that you've never. And I just felt like there were so many moments like that in the film that I appreciated so much, because it just sort of felt like we know what you've seen before and we're not going to give you that, which is one of the reasons I love this movie so much.
I'm so glad that you liked that moment. That means a lot to us, especially because like that was a scene we had to fight for, that like people wanted to take out of the movie, and we're like, no, like this is the movie.
No, that's it. That's why
so cool.
Let special.
We'll come to your test screenings. We got you guys.
Yeah, we need to call you guys next.
Yeah, they're like, why do all the pages say that it's Terrence Malick meets Roland Emmerich? That's a very specific note.
Wait, hold on. Do you guys, does anyone in this room think that Terrence Malick has seen a Roland Emmerich movie? Because I don't think.
I hope so.
Because he said he's gone on record that Zoolander is one of his favorite films.
Yeah.
So
that you, these like serious filmmakers, love the weirdest things you can think of.
That's so great.
The hologram, I mean, that was born from Bryan and I just loving the mantra, and we tried employing this on A Quiet Place, like writing the script, that it's about what you don't see. It's using the power of suggestion, and the power of your imagination. And we knew the trick with the dinosaur film is you have to deliver the goods. You have to be able to show the dinosaurs, but there's other moments that we were trying to find ways to pull back and let things either exist off screen or exist in the shadows or exist in sound design, so that there was a power of the storytelling, that you don't have to just have things lunge out right front and center throughout.
The first time we see the T-Rex, which we don't even really get to see her, but the lightning strike, and I'm just like, oh yeah, like it just, restraint is an amazing thing, and I appreciate it.
It was really cool. I'll get you guys out of here on this one. This is just going to be a quick nerdy question, but once he crash lands and we're in that swamp, I was getting like Star Wars, Luke, Yoda vibes and like that. And again, the only reason why that crossed my mind, well, visually speaking, but also Adam being from the Star Wars universe. Am I being a nerd by thinking that? Was that something that you had thought about, and the idea of like, I don't know, it just brought me back to that feeling I had when I first saw that scene in Star Wars.
I also got Dagobah vibes. I definitely got Dagobah.
And the creature and everything. So I was just curious, if that was intentional.
No, it was. I mean, when we started researching Pangean Earth and because we were imagining a movie that kind of took place approximately Yellowstone 65 million years ago. We started doing research, and oddly, Yellowstone was more of a swamp, and so this idea of swamp started like recurring. And all of a sudden, like our production designer, Kevin Nishioka, who we had found through his brilliant work on Tron and Avatar, and he had just done a brilliant design stuff. Like we just loved his taste. And it was him who he went to Louisiana. He looked at the swamp. He stood in the swamp, and he called us, and he's like, guys, like, I know we were thinking about, something else for this crash landing, but like we got Dagobah here. Like we got Dagobahs right here. We're just like
joke to ourselves. We're like, what if this actually turned into like a covert Kylo Ren origin story? Yes! Like slowly change the script and deliver new sides to Adam, and slowly he's like, guys, not to be on this one, but
it's hilarious.
I do got to say, one of the greatest Star Wars moments of all time is that scene with him and Han, and in Force Awakens. That is honestly probably top Star Wars sequences for me. That scene is brilliant. Like he crushed that sequence. Oh,
he crushed those movies. I love him in every one of those movies. Same. His performance is just riveting every time.
Yeah.
He's breaking news. Adam Driver is a terrific actor. You've heard it here first. We finally come to the conclusion. Guys, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. We know I spoke to you guys much earlier in the day. I know you've been doing interviews all day long, and it means the world to us that you guys stayed on for the end of the press day to come on ReelBlend. And so thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Again, we're fans and we watch your show, so it's cool.
That's oh my god. Well, we're fans of you guys. Insane. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That is mind blowing to us. We appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much to Scott Beck and Bryan Woods for coming on the show and talking about 65. It's funny, we're going to give our full reviews of the movie on the full episode that drops on Friday. But talking with Gabe before recording this, and we were talking about with this type of material, you either put someone like Ryan Reynolds in it and get certain tone, or you put Adam Driver in it and you get a different tone. And so you guys should know what to expect when going into it. But also just the fact that these guys were able to capture what they were out in the elements. I am not an outdoorsy guy, as I'm sure you guys would be able to guess. And so the shoot feels like a bit of a nightmare. And they really immerse themselves in everything that comes with filming in Oregon and Ireland. And so I think you guys are really going to appreciate it when that movie comes out. So not only on Friday are we going to talk about 65, but I want to let you guys know, the real ones, that we're going to have our Scream reviews as well, too, for Scream 6. And then, of course, the guys from Radio Silence come back on the show and we do a spoiler-free conversation about Scream. So you're going to want to tune into that. And also, it's a jam-packed show on Friday. We are also going to be doing our annual Oscar predictions. We're going to go through every single category. All three of us will give our choices for what we think are going to win. And then I know that there are stakes from some kind of bet in play, but at this point, I forget what the results are. It's usually something horrible for the people who lose. So make sure you tune in to Friday's show and listen to what we think is going to win the Oscars on Sunday. And then, of course, like I said, all those great reviews that are upcoming. To make sure that you don't miss anything, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we'll be back on Friday with a full show of ReelBlend.